on, guys? We are back. Week number 11, OWL Season 3. So, this video is a bit early. Well, that's because we have matches now starting on Thursday. No more just Saturday and Sunday. We're going to be having games on, as you can see, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then Sunday as well. Less games per day, but it is about the same amount of matches total anyway. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So it looks like one less match than the last couple of weeks. But yeah, we got some interesting matches. I think it's good that they're spreading out the days a little bit. I always liked that in the previous seasons. Yeah, because if people, there are people that are just busy on weekends, so now they can maybe catch some games on the weekdays leading up to it. So, um, everything is same, holding up online. Obviously, no big updates from the league and the world in regards to the coronavirus. I think once in a couple of weeks, a week or two, we're gonna know a lot more about what's happening if the stay-at-home and all of those things are being extended, or if they're gonna start trying to open some stuff up in the near-ish future. Who knows what'll happen? We'll just have to keep watching the news. Hopefully this blows over. Hopefully everyone is staying as safe as possible. And with that, we'll get into the predictions for this week. Starting off, I will say, looks like a lot of potential blowouts this week, but a lot of times when we say that, it's not how it goes down. So it'll be an interesting week for sure. But leading off, we got Atlanta versus Washington. Atlanta is coming off of a close loss to the Fusion. They are now at 3-2. And then we have the Justice, who are in a tailspin. They've lost 4 in a row. They are down to 2-7. They've really looked out of sorts the last couple of weeks. It's been a little bit painful to see. They've definitely looked like the second worst team in the league. And Atlanta's a really good team. They haven't played a lot of matches, but 3-2, and like they could very well be 4-1. That match with Philly was extremely close last week, as were a lot of the matches. So Atlanta definitely has the upper hand in this one. For Washington, you gotta just try to look for improvements. It's looked a lot like a Corey show and nothing else. Stratus and Tuba have kind of failed to make the impact I thought they would when they've been playing. The tank line looks worse and worse each week. That I was pleasantly surprised with them at first, but now it just looks like they're a little bit out of sync with Roar and Elevote. Just not super comfortable, and it's the same thing with the support line. It just feels like there isn't really a team here that's cohesive and is decisive and can adapt in game. I just don't see any of that. I think the shot calling is lacking. I think the communication from all facets of their team is lacking. So when there's big issues like that, you just want to see small improvements. You want to see certain points where they have a set strategy, they execute it the best they can. You want to see them adapt mid-game. If Atlanta's running something wacky, they switch up their picks to counter it. A lot of the recent weeks, they just run what they run, and if the other team out schemes them and comes up with a better comp, that they can't really pivot, and they're kind of just screwed. So need to see improvements like that from Washington. I don't see them winning. I got Atlanta taking this one pretty easily. I'll give Washington a map, but I could very well see this one being a 3-0. The Atlanta's just small cleanup things that they're gonna need, but overall they look really good. It looks like Addison has up words. Looks like Edison has done a good job acclimating to the OWL stage, and he's been playing very well so far. Same thing with Baby Bay. He's looked pretty solid. Ursa has been good when he's been in as well. Tank line's still rock solid. Hawk I would call him a contender for Rookie of the Year. So yeah, I think Atlanta gets the job done. Washington falls to 2-8 on the season. Then we have the battle for LA. Gladiators and Valiant. couple of teams that have, they've had some ups, they've had some downs. Gladiators now sitting at 2-3. Same thing for Valiant. So a very big match here. I would say Gladiators' highs have definitely been higher than the Valiant, but their lows have also been lower. They've been quite the inconsistent team. That match against the Shock last week was one of the worst, sloppiest matches I've ever seen in my life. Their positioning on multiple points was just absolutely baffling. There was just alts being thrown in willy-nilly left and right every single fight. It was a mess and it was bizarre. But I'm going to take the Gladiators in this. I think that they have a significantly higher ceiling than the Valiant. I think they're a little bit more flexible. I like their roster more up and down. These are two teams that were very, very far apart in my power rankings at the beginning of the season. And while the Gladiators are sitting at 2-3, like I said, the Valiant haven't been world beaters either. They've been a little bit better than expected, but their expected wasn't very high on my bar or a lot of other people's. So it'll be close. Battle for LA always is. It's the same thing with all sports. Rivalries kind of equalize the teams. Even when, like, if in the NFL a team is 10-2 and they're facing their 4-8 rival, a lot of times it's a super close game, even though the 10-2 team is clearly superior. Just because that's how rivalry games go. So I'm gonna say we have a lot of close matches. I don't quite see it getting to 5. I think Gladiators take it 3-1, with either 3 or 4 of the maps being very competitive. Next, we got Florida Mayhem taking on the Paris Eternal. Haven't seen Florida in a while. They've also been struggling quite a bit. Paris, they did get reverse swept by Philly, but they kept it really close. They kind of dominated the first half of that series. They just couldn't really get the rhythm back after Philly came out strong in the second half. So I think this one isn't super close. It's kind of hard to gauge Florida. I haven't seen them in a while, but I'm still very impressed with Paris. They're sitting at 5-3. They've been in all of their matches. They did get upset by Houston the one time, but then they did avenge that loss the following or a couple weeks later. So I just think they're a better team right now. I mean, as long as their players, like Nico has been a surprise. I've been saying this all season. He's looked very, very solid on these flex DPS picks that he's been on. Ben Best has been solid overall. He hasn't been amazing, but as long as he's solid and he's doing what he needs to, it enables Hanbin, who's been great. Gray has been really good, stepping back in for Hip. FD God I would call another contender for Rookie of the Year. He's been really, really good on that main support role. And then, of course, you got Soon playing very well as well. XZ's having apparently a lot of neck pain. He's one of the other DPS, so he's currently out. And then they don't quite have Sparkle yet. He will turn 18 pretty soon, I think. And then he will be eligible to play. But I mean, the combination of Soon and Nico has performed very well in the last couple of weeks. So I'm going to take Paris here. Better talent, better cohesiveness right now, more experience playing. Florida's still a relatively new team overall. So I'm going to take Paris 3-1. I think Florida takes a map off of them. Then we have two struggling teams. Boston Uprising, decisively the worst team in the league. Against Toronto, who is 3-5. They've lost matches that they shouldn't have. They've lost to Houston twice this season, including last week where they were reverse swept and just looked horrible the second half. Again, this is a team that they've got the talent. They just need to put it together. They have just maps where they don't do anything. They get full held and it looks bad. Last week it was Rialto. Normally it's the 2CP map where they look absolutely terrible on. So they've got issues. Toronto's got issues, but they're not horrible. And Boston is horrible. So I'm going to get Toronto in this one. 3-1. Like I said, they'll probably throw a map. They really need to figure out they need to iron this out. I think it probably just comes down to a coaching thing at this point. I mean, you gotta get the guys playing more together, and if you can't, then you need to get a new shot calling type into the team. Other than that, like it's unexcusable because we've seen them play really well. They've looked super clean in certain weeks, but there's no form of consistency there, and they have some consistent players. Nevix, consistent player. Surefour, consistent player. Kareev, very consistent. You know, even Kellix, I would say, is a consistent player. But there's something wrong, and the coaching staff really needs to iron it out. Like I said, for me, I really just think it's a shot calling thing. Um, and a focus thing because there are times where they just stagger in where they lose first pick like 5 fights in a row, and that's just a focus and communication thing. Just stay with your team, be where you need to be, and you won't get picked before fights even start consistently. So, with all that said, still got Toronto winning this one. Boston, I can't see myself picking them in the near future in any match. Next, we got Dallas Fuel taking on San Francisco Shock. So, Shock, they're starting to pick up a little bit of steam once again. They beat the Gladiators last time out, albeit in an extremely sloppy match from both sides. And then Dallas, they've been looking pretty clean. They got 2 match wins in a row. Doha playing really well for the most part. Decay has been popping off like an absolute monster. Um, I think that their support line has been pretty decent as well. I'm curious to know why it's all Crimzo and we're getting none of Unko. Maybe they just like him on the Moira more because they've been playing a pretty good amount of Moira. I don't know. I think Unko is better than Crimzo, but I'm not in that team. I don't see their scrims, so Crimzo's been performing pretty well. And then I think the tank line has been super solid as well. With Dallas, it's really going to come down to the DPS. I think when their DPS have just decent weeks, they're going to have a really hard time winning. Gamsu and Note, very solid tank duo, but do they carry games like we've seen? For example, the Gladiators, OGE and Space have super high ceilings that sometimes they just pop off and they win. Same thing with a team like the Shock, where they just absolutely go off. And you're looking at in particular Choyobin. I don't see Dallas with that kind of firepower. With Widow and McCree being disabled, Dallas does still have a couple of their favorite picks. When you look at Tracer for Decay, Doomfist for Doha, I think there's an opportunity there. I can't pick them, or sorry, I can't pick Dallas here. I'm gonna go with San Francisco. I think it's pretty close. Um, like I said, Dallas just scares me. I think that San Francisco, because of Krusty, because that great coaching staff, I think that they're gonna have a scheme for slowing down Decay. And for Dallas, my next question for them is, what do you do when Decay can't pop off? When the entire enemy team's comp is focused on mitigating his damage, his impact. Can you make plays then? Can Doha open it up? Can the tank line punish and win you fights? Can your support line get picks on their heroes? Like depending on which heroes they're playing. Can they win the ult charge fights with the other team's supports? That's what we need to find out about Dallas. Like I said, San Francisco, I feel like they're starting to get on a little bit of a roll. They're starting to feel themselves a little bit now. So I'm gonna go with them and their momentum. I'll say another 3-1. And then we have the Chinese matches. So no Vancouver. They wow, Vancouver got smacked last week. They're not in action. We are back to just the four Chinese teams, starting off with Chengdu versus Guangzhou. So Chengdu's win against Vancouver last week, in my opinion, that was just a must win. You had to win that match, otherwise, when you're 1-5, I think the season's just starting to slip away. But 2-4, it's doable. Um, Charge are sitting at 3-3. The Charge, man, they've got to be. If you're a Charge fan, if you're watching all their games, it's got to be super frustrating because they're just up and down. They win, they lose, they win, they lose, they win, they lose. They're sitting at 3-3, and I mean, like they've looked really good. They've looked really bad. I feel like I say this every week. It's just that they don't have the consistency yet. I'm gonna go with the Charge here. I think they get it done. I think that they're better against brawly teams as well, and that is the hunter's specialty. That's true. You don't, as the casters have always said, you don't want to get into the clown fiesta with them. But I think if there's the Charger are definitely one of the best teams equipped to play in that kind of style. So I'm gonna go with the Charge here. I think it's a sweep, but I don't know if it's a blowout, if that makes sense. I think the Charge just kind of find ways to win these maps. Chengdu has looked really solid on control maps and then just lost them 2-1, 199. We had the match between these guys last time, went to a crazy map 5. The Charge came back and won that when there was no way they should have won. So I think that they've got a little bit of momentum there. They have a good mentality and they have a good plan for playing against the Hunters. So I'm gonna say that they get it done in 3, and they get themselves that 4th win. Then we got Shanghai, who has looked like the best team over out far east. Um, Sitting at 4-1. Hangzhou has looked pretty solid as well. I'm gonna take Shanghai here. The Spark, the Spark have looked solid. I'll give them credit for that. But Shanghai, again, a little bit like the Shock. I feel like they're really starting to get rolling. They have a couple of players who are newer to the Overwatch League, new to the team, and I think that they're starting to really get ahead of steam and they're starting to get comfortable playing with each other. And Hangzhou is a team that can they can win the close matches, they can clutch out. But I think Shanghai is playing too well here for the Spark to keep it close. I'm gonna say Shanghai take it 3-1. Another great performance for Fleta. I expect big things from that tank line as well. Then we got the Charge taking on the Spark. Once again, I'm going to go with the Spark here, taking it in 5. Guangzhou has a couple of map types that are pretty rough for them, and I think that a team like Hangzhou is going to take advantage of that a lot more than a team like Chengdu. I see it going to a map 5. Spark have been pretty solid on map 5s. The Charge have just been... It's too much inconsistency for me. I can't pick them to win both matches in a week. I see him going 1-1 again, is because Spark look really solid. I think that they're definitely second best in terms of like execution, communication, alt management in this little sub region, I guess you could say. So yeah, close match, entertaining match, but I like the Spark in the end. Then we got the Hunters versus the Dragons. I'm gonna go with Dragons here. I don't know quite what it is with the Hunters. There's something when I watch the Hunters that I'm not liking. They've, if you look at their matches, they could very, very easily be 4-2, 5-1. But there's critical mistakes at critical moments that have just turned maps for them, have turned series for them, that they just can't quite pull off yet. I don't know if maybe it's Ameng. There are singular styles, and Ameng's inability to play the other tanks at a competent level. I mean, his Winston looked really rough when we saw it a couple weeks ago. No Ryan in rotation. His Orisa's okay. I don't even think it's good. And then of course, his Wrecking Ball is really good, but is that enough against a team like Shanghai? I don't think it is. I think they'll just win those battles, the frontline battles, pretty consistently. I don't think the Hunters' DPS will be enabled quite enough to pull off a victory here. I think that Fleta is one of the best DPS in the league at countering other DPS. He was one of the best dueling Widows, and that carries over to other heroes as well. He's good at shutting down, others and taking advantage of mistakes and when people are out of position. And I think that Jinmu is a player that can find himself out of position. He can make huge plays. He's got an incredible amount of skill, but sometimes the focus wanes and he makes head-scratching plays, not only with his ult, but with his positioning as well. So I think Shanghai capitalizes on that, and they eventually get a win. I'll say 3-1. A lot of 3-1s this week. But yeah, like I said, a lot of these matchups, I think that there is a pretty clear favorite. But like I said, we've had weeks like this before. So I would pump your brakes on saying that these are all going to be blowouts. We're not sure. We're not sure what'll happen. We did see a decent amount of Ryan last week. He's not in the pool this week, so who knows what'll happen? Maybe we see some of these teams bounce back, like Washington. Maybe they'll find their footing because they have a lot of talent. We haven't seen Florida in a bit. Maybe they come out and look really, really good. So I think we should have some interesting matches over the next couple of days. Battle for LA is always great. The Chinese matches are always super entertaining. Like I said, if you don't want to stay up at 3 and watch the matches, that's totally fine. I get that. I don't watch them either. But go back and watch the VODs. I've watched every VOD of those, and they are fun to watch. So that's all for me today. If you have any comments, big predictions, disagreements, agreements, let me know in the comments below. As always, thank you guys very much for watching. I hope you have yourselves a fantastic weekend, and I'll see you in the next one.